Okay, how about now? Can you hear me now? Looks like it's a little loud. Can you guys hear me now? How is it now? Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening. Yeah? Does that work? Are we working? Is the mic working? It's not too loud, is it? Is it fine? Everything good? Okay, don't move. Yeah, okay, good. All right, that worked. Whew. I don't know what happened. The microphone was disabled, and I had to find a way to break the stream without breaking the stream. I know that doesn't make much sense. Okay, good. Hi, everybody. Again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope you're doing well around the world. It is a beautiful, hot summer morning here in Spokane, Washington. Hello from Spokane, Washington. For those of you who are new, and I saw a lot of you in the chat room are new, I live in the northwest corner of the United States, not too far from the Canadian border, not too far from British Columbia, which is just north of us, not too far from the Idaho border, which is the state east of us, but I am about 300 miles away from Seattle, and maybe 350 from the coast, maybe even a little more than that. And I see somebody from all the way from Kentucky, also in the United States, another part of the world, and from France. And I know some of you are from Brazil. Yes, well, Leo is asking the question, are we going to have a longer class this morning? Yes, we are going to have a longer class this morning. I could not get into the studio last week, and so I'll double up today. It'll be a double up day. And we have kind of a long subject, which is punctuation, and we're going to start with commas, and there's a lot to talk about when we talk about commas. So we're going to cover that. And when we talk about commas, we also have to talk about grammar rules. So I might have to stop and maybe explain some grammar rules as well as we go along and talk about commas. So it will be long. Bear with us. Tennessee, Kentucky, wow. Right here in the States. So some of you not too far away. Boris, you're asking what the Oxford comma means. We will talk about the Oxford comma. We will definitely talk about the Oxford comma. And Venezuela, I see here. And yeah, hello to you all, whatever time of day it is for you around the world. Before we begin, I'm going to share the class notes with you one more time. These class notes, if you're on your computer, you can click on these and follow along. I'll also have them up behind me in just a second. Oh, hello from Turkey. Hello, Turkey. Oh, Rosa. Hello and goodbye, Rosa. I'm glad you could jump in for a few minutes. Sorry we have a late start here. And Brazil, of course. Hello to Brazil. And Mexico. And before we start any lesson, I always start with these links. And these links you can find on the class notes. So this first link is Zach's email. Zach is from Canada. If you have any questions about these Smrt Live classes, you can contact Zach, and it's zach@smartenglish.com. Remember, there is no A in smart. It's smrt english.com. Of course, the real word smart has an A in it, but in this one, no A, just smrt english.com. We have a couple live pages. Again, if you want to know more about these Smrt Live classes, you can go to the Smrt Live page either here or here. see the classes we offer. If you haven't joined our Facebook group yet, which is Learn English on Facebook with Smrt, you can click here and join the Facebook group. If you are watching on YouTube, I probably don't need to share this link with you, but in case you want to watch any of the old archived videos, you can always go to YouTube, and the link is there. And we have another Facebook page. We have Smrt Live on Facebook, which is Smrt Live Class. So facebook.com Smrt Live Class. All right. That being said, let's talk about punctuation. Right now, I don't have any vocabulary regarding punctuation up here in the box, but as we talk, if I say any words and we need to define those words, I'll add them there. So let's start with the comma. There are many, many uses of commas. Let's talk about some of them. Let's talk about most of them, actually. Commas can be frustrating, I think, even for native English writers, native American English writers. The comma can become very confusing, and people misuse it all the time. I think people misuse it more often than they just leave it out. They attempt to use it, and it just doesn't work. So let's look at the comma. Okay, the first one that you're probably familiar with is the list. Anytime you write a sentence and you have a list in that sentence, a list made of nouns, we need the comma. He likes rock, hip-hop, jazz, and country. Of course, all styles of music, and I'll make that a little bigger. I'll blow it up a little bit in the background so it's a little easier to see. So notice between each genre of music, there is a comma, except for this last one. And since Barris asked this already, the Oxford comma, here it is. Here's your Oxford comma. If I were to add a comma before the and this last item in the list, country music, I would need a comma to make that the Oxford comma. Now, some people use it and some people don't. It is a stylistic choice. It's a stylistic use of the comma. I don't use it. I'm going to take it away. I don't use it. I used to use it all the time. If you use it, there's nothing wrong with it. It's okay. I used to use it all the time, but because my students did not use it, most of my students did not use it, and I read most of their papers, I saw many, many examples without the Oxford comma, and that actually made an impression on me, and I stopped using it. I stopped using it because most of the sentences I was reading did not include the Oxford comma, and that had an effect on me. So what you read does have an effect on the way you write. If you read the same type of example over and over again, you might pick up that tendency, you might pick up that habit in your own writing, and I happened to pick up that habit in my own writing, and I dropped my Oxford commas. Both ways are correct, Rosa. That is correct both ways. It's a stylistic choice, meaning it's your choice, what you're comfortable with writing. Leo, you're asking, do we need commas if the parts in this list are not the same genre? Yes. When you have a list of nouns, and I'll talk about this rule again later, when we have compound subjects or compound objects, we need, and there's more than two things in that compound subject or compound object, we need commas to separate them no matter what. So basically what I'm saying, if our list is made of nouns, we need a comma between each noun in that list. The exception is if there's only two nouns. So for example, if I wrote, he likes rock and hip hop, no comma, no comma. There's only two items, and two items can be separated just by the word and. No comma necessary. If I put a comma in there, that is incorrect. That is not even the Oxford comma. That is just plain wrong. So when we say list, we're talking of 3 or more words. We need at least 3. We need at least 3. Yes, in writing essays, if in an essay you ever have a list, you need to separate that list with commas. Again, a list of 3 or more items, 3 or more nouns, you need to separate with commas. Okay, for essays, Bharat, maybe you're asking, if you write an essay, an academic essay for school, should you include the Oxford comma or no? Now, that might be your teacher's choice, but usually it's the writer's choice. Usually it is your own stylistic choice. Again, my choice is I always used to use it, and now I never use it. My style changed. I changed my style. I would say be consistent. If you write an essay, if you write a longer paper, and it contains more than one list, just be consistent. Don't use the Oxford comma in one list and then not in another, if that makes sense. Please be consistent. Be consistent in your use of the Oxford commas. Dare you say it avoids confusion? Yes, it avoids confusion. Let's look off another one. The car drove off the road, through the fence, down the hill, and into a clearing. Okay, now these aren't nouns. They have nouns. We have the road, the fence, the hill, and a clearing, but they're all starting with prepositions. Off, through, down, into. So I put a series of 3 or more words. I should add or phrases. They might not just be nouns. They might be phrases. So a list can be made up of just single words. Rock, hip-hop, jazz, country. Even though hip-hop is 2 words, it's just considered one thing. So it might just be a list of nouns, but it also might be phrases, such as off the road, through the fence, down the hill, and into a clearing. We have 4 prepositional phrases. So yes, you can have a list of phrases. You can also have a list of phrases. Now let's look at the next one. France is famous for its pastry. Italy is renowned for its pasta. And Switzerland is known for its chocolate. So we have to add one more thing here. Not just words or phrases. We also have clauses. It can separate entire clauses. Here we have 3 independent clauses. A list. This entire sentence is a list. We have 3 examples in our list. We have the food that countries are famous for. France is famous for its pastry. Italy is renowned for its pasta, and Switzerland is known for its chocolate. These are all clauses. How do I know they're clauses? We have France is, subject verb. Italy is, subject verb, and Switzerland is, subject verb. So these are 3 independent clauses. They happen to make a list because we have this and joining the last one. So we can use commas in a list to separate clauses. Words, phrases, or clauses all can appear in a list. Just remember you need 3 or more before you use the comma. Definitely use a comma to separate the first 2. And it's your choice, your stylistic choice, whether to add that comma before the conjunction and in the last thing. Okay. Leo, that's right. Switzerland is known for its banks, but you can't eat a bank. It's probably against the law to eat a bank. You can't eat chocolate. And any questions? Okay, let's continue. If you ask a question in the chat room and I don't see it, ask it again. I'll see it eventually. Let me add, I shared the link to the class notes one more time. For those of you just joining us, we are talking about punctuation. Right now we're focusing on the comma because the comma has so many rules. So many rules. Natty, you're asking, Natty, what is your country famous for? You tell me what food is your country famous for? And a good morning to you, Vivek. With your example sentences are always excellent. Okay. Let's look at the next one. Independent clauses and coordinating conjunctions. Now, I've talked about this before. Before I continue, let me put some vocabulary in here. And I've done this vocabulary a couple times. But remember, a phrase is a group of words without subject-verb agreement. A clause is a group of words with a subject-verb agreement. Oh yes, of course, Natty. Pad thai. And then we have two types of clauses. We have independent clause, which is the same thing. We can have a period at the end. And a dependent clause, same thing. It's a clause, so it's the same thing. But a dependent clause will have a linking word. So it cannot have a period. So when I say phrase, it's a group of words that does not have subject-verb agreement, so it cannot be a sentence on its own. A clause is a group of words with subject-verb agreement, and there are two types. There's an independent clause. It has subject-verb agreement, needs nothing else. You can put a period at the end and make it a sentence. A dependent clause, though, will have a linking word attached to it, so it cannot have a period at the end. It has to be connected to an independent clause. Okay, so if I were to add Natty's country and food, I would say France is famous for its pastry, comma. Italy is renowned for its pasta, comma. Switzerland is known for its chocolate. And then I would, I used an Oxford comma, didn't I? Let me get rid of that, because as I said, I don't, and Thailand is, we have renowned, we have famous, we have known. I'm trying to think of another synonym. And Thailand is appreciated? No, it's not quite right. I'm going back to famous. If you can think of a synonym for famous, renowned, or known, please let me know. It's famous for its pad thai? Or just pad thai? Did I spell that right? Pad, just, I misplaced the H's there. Pad thai. Okay. Paluxio, you have a question about comma use. I lost one shoe and I had to hop on one leg yesterday. We're going to get to that rule. Is that rule here? Yes, okay. We're at that rule now. That's good. Okay. We use the comma to link two independent clauses with a coordinating conjunction. And, but, so, or, for, nor, yet. And these we can remember as the fanboys. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. So if you can remember the acronym fanboys, you can remember the coordinating conjunctions. There's 7 of them. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. When you have two independent clauses and a coordinating conjunction in between, you use a comma. The service at this restaurant is great and the food is delicious. So over here we have the service at this restaurant, subject. We have one big long subject there, the service at this restaurant, then verb is great. And on this side we have the food and the verb is. So we have on both sides subject-verb agreement. 2 sentences with subject-verb agreement. If we put a coordinating conjunction like and in the middle of that, we're going to need the comma to separate them. Even though it's just 2 things, we need a comma to separate those because they are independent clauses. The government has made an effort to promote healthy eating, comma, but it seems to have made little difference. Same thing. 2 independent clauses. There's an independent clause on both sides. The government, subject, has made, verb, and then the rest of the sentence, the object, what it has made, then comma, then we have the coordinating conjunction but, it, subject, and verb, seems. So 2 separate subject-verb agreements. If you put a coordinating conjunction in the middle, you need a comma, always. So Paluxio's example, I lost one shoe. We have subject-verb agreement, I lost. So after the object shoe, and I had. So yes, 2 subject-verb on both sides of a coordinating conjunction. Paluxio, you need a comma in between. And going back up here, Bharat, you have a list example. I'll add Bharat's list example here. India is known for its, the possessive its has no apostrophe in it, just its. India is known for its yoga, spirituality, and culture. That's a good sentence. And you guys fed me a couple of synonyms here. Well-known, celebrated, is celebrated. How about that? I like that a lot, Milena. Is celebrated for its pad thai. Okay. We are talking, for those of you just joining us, we are talking uses of commas. Uses of commas. So far we've talked about lists and we've talked about joining 2 independent clauses. In both cases, you need commas. Yes, good, Venci. It is a compound sentence. When we have a compound sentence, you are going to need a comma because we have 2 independent clauses. Okay, we have some new people joining us, so I'll share the link one more time. Here is the link to the class notes. Put that in there so you can follow along. So we've talked two rules. We've talked list, independent clauses with coordinating conjunctions. Yes, and we are talking compound sentences when we're talking about this. Is it same as compound predicates? No, we're going to talk about that too. We're going to talk about compound predicates or subjects and compound objects and compound verbs as well. A compound sentence is different than a compound subject, a compound object, a compound verb. It's also different than a compound word. So in grammar, when we use this word compound, you have to look at the word after to know what we are talking about, because they kind of refer to different things. Okay, let's talk about introductory elements, and sometimes this is referred to as introductory phrases. I call them introductory elements before the subject of a sentence. If you have anything before the subject of your sentence and it's not a part of that subject, if it's not describing that subject, like an adjective describing that subject, or or what do you call it? An article like a, the, or an, that goes with that subject, you have to use a comma. So let's look at the first example. The first example, I had to use two sentences to show this one. Raphael wanted to travel by himself to New York. Then I put a period here. Then I have this word, however. However is a linking word. Before I've taught it that you need to have a semicolon before, but you can actually have a full stop before. You just can't have well, I'll get to it later. You can't have a comma before. But if you have a complete sentence like this, you can have the word however, comma, his father was not willing to let him go that far from home. So these two sentences are working together. Raphael wanted to travel by himself to New York, period or full stop. However, his father was not willing to let him go that far from home. Because this word, however, comes before the subject, his father, and it's not a part of that subject, it's not a modifier for the subject. His, that possessive, is a modifier for father, so that's part of the subject, but the word however is not. The word however is a linking word, and it's connecting these two sentences. It's showing us the relationship between these two sentences. So we need a comma. We need a comma. In my opinion, comma, the movie was not as good as the actor's other work. And notice here I didn't put a sentence before because this is just a statement of opinion. If you ever start a sentence, in my opinion, of course it's going to show that you're ready to give your opinion, but it's not part of the subject, the movie. It does not modify that subject. So we need a comma. We need a comma. Anytime you have an introductory word or phrase and it does not modify the subject, you always need a comma. Nora, you're asking, can we start a paragraph with the word however if the second paragraph is contrasting the first one? Yes, you can use linking words to show the relationship between paragraphs. So you could use the word however. You would have to be careful that your second paragraph, its function, is to contrast that first paragraph. But yes, you could do that. Would I recommend it? No, I would not recommend it. But can it be done? Yes. I would say you would have to be a highly skilled writer to use one whole paragraph to contrast the paragraph that came before. Is it possible? Yes, of course it's possible. Anything is possible in writing, but that would be very, very difficult. I think you would have to be very comfortable as a writer to be able to do that. I would never attempt that, and I feel pretty comfortable as a writer. That would be a trick. That would be something to attempt, though. I might try to do that. In my opinion, is it a noun clause? In my opinion, well, we don't have, it's not a clause because we don't have a verb. We have a preposition in and then a noun, in my opinion. I guess we could call that a prepositional phrase, although that in is not showing time or place. I would say more of a, it's a more idiomatic. It's a phrase. I'd say it's a beginning phrase. I'll look it up. It must have a specific word, but it's definitely marking that we are about to give our opinion. If you ever use that, of course, what follows is going to be opinion. Opinion. I'll look up the exact word for that. It's not quite an appositive, and we'll talk about that later. Teresa, when we use in my opinion, we don't need quotation marks. If we are the writer and we're sharing our opinion, we do not have to quote ourselves. We do not have to quote ourselves. We will talk about commas and the use of quotation coming up soon, but no. Okay. Paluxio, so you've written a sentence, Paluxio, that it's close to being correct. I'm actually going to go up a little bit to this one. Your example here, I've just taken a sleeping pill, comma, however, I can't get any sleep. We would need either a semicolon or a period here. The reason being is because we have two subject-verb agreements. I've just taken and I can't get. So these are two independent clauses. When you have two independent clauses, you need something stronger here with one of these adverbial linking words, like however. With coordinating conjunctions, it's a little different. You just need the comma. If you use one of these words, so like however, therefore, moreover, you're going to need something stronger between two independent clauses. Now, you can use these words when you don't have two independent clauses, but if you do have two independent clauses, they need a stronger punctuation, like a period or a semicolon. I know that's kind of tricky. These ones, the fanboys, are easy. They don't need extra punctuation, just a comma between two independent clauses. Here, you need a semicolon or period. With however, nonetheless, words like that, you're going to need stronger punctuation. Okay, let's look at some more of these introductory elements. Although they were unable to see clearly. Now, the last couple weeks, like maybe 3 and 4 weeks ago, we talked about this. Here is a linking word, like although, and then they have they were. So we have subject-verb agreement. But because we're using this linking word, this becomes a dependent clause. If you start with a dependent clause, you're going to need a comma. They found. Now with words like although, even though, if they come in the middle, you do not need a comma. But if they come at the beginning, you do need a comma. If they come at the beginning before the independent clause, if the dependent clause comes before the independent clause, you need a comma. If the independent clause comes first and then the dependent clause, no comma. Natty, you're right. The although and however have the same meaning. We can use them synonymously. We can use them as synonyms. But because they're kind of two different types of words, if I were to write this sentence and then I use the word however, again, I would need to use that punctuation. So there are some linking words that need no punctuation if they come at the end. There's some that need punctuation. So be careful about the linking words you use. Some of them have different rules. Some of the more common ones, like although, if, because, they follow this rule, where if they come at the beginning, you need a comma before the independent clause, and then if you switch them, then no comma. But other words like however, nonetheless, therefore, they are always going to need the punctuation. And Paluxio, so this would be correct. Remember, if the dependent clause, and this part is the dependent clause, if the dependent clause comes at the end, you don't need punctuation, you don't need the comma. But if it comes at the beginning, if dependent clause comes at the beginning, again, you do need the comma. Here's another however question. They found their way through the fog. Period. Oh, I just wrote that. However, comma, they were unable to see clearly. Okay, here's another one. Smiling from ear to ear, comma, the man looked suspicious. Okay, even though this is describing the man, it's actually not part of the subject, the man. It's describing what the man is doing. He is smiling from ear to ear, comma, the man looks suspicious. It's describing what he's doing and not describing himself directly, even though we can see it, we can imagine that smile on his face. It's still not considered part of the subject. So, comma. Here's another one describing action, grabbing her umbrella, comma. Kate raced out of the house. And another one, and here's her sister's reaction. Confused by her sister's sudden change in mood, comma, Jill stayed quiet. So if we have like a reduced clause like this, where you have the ing or you have the past participle to begin the phrase, it needs a comma. Milena, good example. Let's look at an example. Hearing that her father was in hospital, and in American English we put articles before hospital and university. Hearing that her father was in the hospital, comma, Jane left work immediately. So another one like this, another ing. Michelle, you say, how is however different from although? They have the same meaning, but one needs punctuation, one doesn't. They just happen to belong to two different categories of linking words. I think one is called, now I have to remember the name. One is called, I believe, an adverbial, and the other is and I know this is confusing, like an adverbial conjunction. So they just belong to two different categories, and maybe for next lesson, next week, I'll just make two big lists of linking words and the category they belong in. Because they belong in those two categories, one needs punctuation and the other does not necessarily need punctuation. I know that's confusing, and it makes it hard, makes writing hard, and the choice of words you use kind of difficult. But that is unfortunately English for you. Here's another example from JB. Feeling hungry, comma, he decided to eat. Good, another one, JB. This one using the past participle to begin it. Bored, comma, he chose to entertain himself. This one, notice it's just one word, but even if that one word is not part of the subject, it needs to be separated by a comma. So anytime you have introductory elements, something that comes before the subject and is not a direct modifier of that subject, you need a comma. Rosa, you're asking about this sentence. I'm afraid of ghosts, although I've never seen one. I hope to never see a ghost. I hope you never see a ghost. I'm afraid of ghosts, although I've never seen one. Yes, this is correct because although is in the middle, your dependent clause is in the middle, and yeah, that's it. And it has the word although, so no punctuation, no punctuation. The only time you would need punctuation is if you began with the dependent clause. Although I've never seen a ghost, comma, I'm afraid of them. Nora, you're asking about these two sentences. Nora, let's look at your examples. I drank a lot of water, semicolon, however, comma, I'm still feeling thirsty. That's correct. Even though I drank a lot of water, comma, I'm still feeling thirsty. Both are correct. Those are correct. Vivek, I have just taken a sleeping pill even though I can't get any sleep. Okay, Vivek is asking if this one's correct, and grammatically it looks correct. So you used the dependent clause at the end and no comma, but you have to think about the meaning of even though. I have just taken a sleeping pill even though I can't get any sleep. For this sentence to make sense, you have to flip these two things. You have to say, I can't get any sleep even though I have just taken a sleeping pill. You have to flip these. You have to flip these. I can't get any sleep even though I have just taken a sleeping pill. For this to make sense, this condition has to come first. What came first? Sometimes when you use even though, although, or though, sometimes you can flip the two phrases and it's fine, but sometimes you have to consider what comes first. If it's sequential, if it means something came first and then something came second, the dependent clause will be what came first. And taking the sleeping pill came first. You take the sleeping pill first. And then what happens after? You still can't sleep. You still can't sleep. So even though this shows a very surprising condition, you have to think what happens first and what happens second. Somebody's asking about, Thushara, you're asking about a participle clause. A participle clause, I think, would be like these, yeah, like the bored or confused. If you start with that, you have a participle clause. Michelle, you're asking, how do we know, like between however and although and even though? I guess look it up. You're going to have to look up use or read. When you read, you'll see a lot of examples. turn in a paper and have the teacher mark it up. Just looking at a word, there's no way to know just by looking at a word. Use it and see if it's correct. Sometimes error check on computer will catch that stuff. So, Shisher, you have this one, observing the time. I went to the school. That is correct. Let's see. What else do we have? Sorry, I'm a little behind on your comments here. Okay, thank you, Kim. Kim, yes, it's a difference between coordinating conjunctions and subordinating conjunctions. A subordinating conjunction doesn't need punctuation, but a coordinating conjunction does need punctuation. So those are the two categories, and let's add those to the vocabulary up here. We have coordinating conjunctions, and these type of conjunctions are linking words need punctuation, and then the other category is subordinating conjunction, and those don't need punctuation unless, of course, again, unless they come at the beginning. But in the middle of the sentence, they don't need punctuation. So, or did I just get those mixed up? I might have just gotten those mixed up. I might have to flip these. Coordinating don't. Let's see. And again, the fanboys, the for and. Need commas between two independent clauses. Subordinating conjunctions, I think this is one, need punctuation. Okay, maybe I got it right now. Correct me if I'm wrong, of course, as always, correct me if I'm wrong. So if you look up a word, and hopefully maybe even in the dictionary, it will tell you whether it's a coordinating conjunction or a subordinating conjunction. I know that's, and then again, these fanboys are still a little different. I know it's confusing. I know it's super, super confusing. And it's not friendly to writers. These rules are not very friendly to writers, but it is important to learn them, especially when you have to write formal essays. You have to write things academically for school. They're not convenient, but with practice, you can become comfortable using them. Okay, one thing, if I go back up, one thing I should say, with these lists, did I give an example of a list? Okay, I did, of just two things. And then I was going to say something with the fanboys. Sometimes you'll see with the fanboys something like we went to the park and now let's see. Let me make it a little bigger. We went to the park and then the zoo. When you have a fanboy like this, and there's not a separate subject verb on both sides, remember, no comma, no comma. So you don't always have to put a comma between a coordinating conjunction. A very common mistake for writers to make is to put a comma before every fanboy they use. Again, fanboys are for and nor, but, or, yet so. You don't need them. You don't necessarily need them before every fanboy you use. You have to look first on both sides whether there's a subject or a verb. Eventually you're asking, what is the next topic? I feel like because we're talking about it, we should maybe stick to these more conjunctions, subordinating, coordinating conjunctions, adverbials, fanboys. We should stay on the topic of writing. Hopefully you guys aren't exhausted with writing. Sure, you're asking, how can I start my general paper essay with a good sentence? A general essay, a good sentence to begin with is called a hook. A hook, and I believe I did make a video of that earlier. So in the archive, there is writing your first sentence. First sentence of an essay should be hook. It should be an interesting sentence that introduces the topic. It doesn't have to tell your reader too much about the topic, but it should interest them. It can be a question. It can be an anecdote, meaning a short story. It can be a quotation from a famous person. It can be an interesting fact. I usually try to find an interesting fact about my topic and start with that interesting fact as a way to begin discussion of that topic. So I look online, do a little bit of research, find an interesting fact about my topic, write that first, and then begin the general discussion of the topic. What is the topic? And I let my reader know more about it. But yes, interesting fact. I like to begin with an interesting fact, and I would recommend that to you as well. Okay. Ready for more punctuation? Here we go. Okay, we just talked about introductory elements, but sometimes those introductory elements can be inserted in the middle of a sentence. So I'm going to show you the same example, but now we're inserting, or sometimes this is called interrupting. Inserting or interrupting phrases. Raphael wanted to travel by himself to New York, period. His father, comma, however, comma, was not willing to let him go that far from home. Now I know I just said if you have a word like however, you need, strong punctuation like period or semicolon. But here we've put however in the middle of the sentence and not the beginning. It is interrupting the second sentence. So in this case, we would use commas on both sides. It is still a linking word. It's still showing us the relationship between the two sentences, but it is not coming directly between the two sentences. And when we do that, and again, this is stylistic, you don't have to do this, but some writers do. This is a writer's choice. If you take that introductory element and instead use it as an interrupter, you put commas on both sides. Raphael wanted to travel by himself to New York. Full stop. His father, comma, however, comma, was not willing to let him go that far from home. So sometimes the punctuation you use depends on position in a sentence. Position in a sentence. And I know that is even more confusing probably to some of you, but it's the difference between introducing a sentence and interrupting a sentence. All right, goodbye, Natty, goodbye, and good night, and good luck, and I'll see you for the next lesson. Again, I'll take an example from above and now use it as an interrupter. The movie was not, comma, in my opinion, comma, as good as the actor's other work. the movie was not, in my opinion, as good as the actor's other work. So again, in my opinion, it's not coming at the beginning, it's coming in the middle. Put commas on both sides of the interrupting phrase. Milena, you have an example. It's a good example too. Let's look at Milena's example. Cats, comma, unlike dogs, comma, do not respect their masters. Good interrupter. Cats, comma, unlike dogs, comma, do not respect their masters. And that's true. Cats don't always do what you ask them to do. Don't always do what you say for them to do. Leo, you're saying for a writer, maybe the best way to do it is to write your whole paragraph or your whole essay first and then go back and put in punctuation. The first time you write, and this is the writing process, the first time you write a paragraph or an essay, it should be the rough draft. It should not be your final draft. You don't have to worry about spelling or punctuation or anything like that, or using linking words. You don't have to worry about that. That comes later, and it took me years to learn this. I thought as a student, I thought I could just write the first draft and correct mistakes as I went along, and I did that for so long as a student, and it's such a terrible way to write. I learned that, and I learned it's actually shorter, because I thought, well, if I write a rough draft, or if I write one or two drafts and then the final draft, it's more work. I have to write 2 essays instead of 1. It is not more work. In fact, it is less work. If you just get all your ideas out on paper or the computer first, maybe put in some pieces of research you found as well, then come back to it, fix your spelling errors, put in some linking words to show relationships, put in some more quotations, put in punctuation. If you do that, it's actually a shorter way to write. It takes less time. Content first, and then edits later. Always get your content down first, and then you can change it and fix it later. So, Leo, I would suggest that. That's a good suggestion. Write the paragraph first, then go back and edit it. Always get your content out first. Once you get your content on paper or on the computer, it's so much easier to edit. The first thing you have to do as a writer, turn the editor off. Just be the writer. Don't care about rules or what's wrong or right or if everything's perfect. Get the content down, and then later, stop being the writer, become the editor, and then fix what you wrote. It's a much easier way to write, and that's how I write now. And for me, it's so much better, so much easier, and so much faster, actually. So try that. Michelle, are you asking, in these examples, are these appositives? They're not. We'll talk about appositives. We haven't got to appositives yet. Appositives are another type of interrupter, but these are not appositives. Yes, Teresa, it is like pausing. So if we said this out loud, if we were to read these sentences out loud, it would be something like, cats, unlike dogs, do not respect their masters. When we read a sentence like this, we do pause at the commas. Sometimes it's also like you take on another voice, a lower voice. Cats, unlike dogs, do not respect their masters. Yeah, it shows a shift. It's a shift in the sentence. It's like you forgot to say something at the beginning and now you're putting it in. And it's a stylistic way to write. Let's look at another example. The weather, I was happy to see. And we have an independent clause. We have a whole separate independent clause here. The weather, comma, I was happy to see, comma, was beginning to clear. It was, comma, sadly, comma, the last day of camp. Mary, unlike Anne, is very organized. Of course, you can always write these at the beginning. It's a style of writing, though, that shows it's more naturalistic. It's almost the way we talk or think. It's showing the way we talk or think when sometimes we begin a sentence and then we realize we need to tell our listener or a reader something else that we forgot at the beginning. So we're clarifying, we're giving extra information. You don't have to write like this. You don't have to write like this. But if you're comfortable writing like this, of course, you can. Interrupters, or inserting something into a sentence. And you can do it after like a negative, but here we have the verb and a negative. So basically you can do it after a verb, or you can do it after a subject. So you can do it after the subject, or you can do it after the verb. It depends on what it goes with. Here we have was not, and then in my opinion. So we already know it's going to be a negative opinion. And here we have an adverb, sadly, was sadly. So now we have an adverb helping to modify the verb, helping to show this person's opinion after the verb, and then sometimes after the subject. The weather, I was happy to see. So now we know it's going to be positive weather, was beginning to clear. Yes, Steve, that's a great question. Can we put them at the end of a sentence? We can. We can put them at the end. And again, this is very stylistic. Once you become more comfortable with writing English, you can use them to affect. Where you place something in the sentence is kind of where your readers will pick it up. It was the last day of camp, sadly. It's that you're going to leave that sad impression with your reader. If you write this, it was sadly the last day of camp. Almost exact same sentence, has the exact same meaning, but you're kind of leaving them with the last day of camp. It will also help maybe transition into the next sentence. It was the last day of camp, sadly. I felt very depressed. We might follow sadly by talking more about that feeling. It was sadly the last day of camp. We rolled up our sleeping bags and took down our tents. And this one, the next sentence, it might make more sense to follow the idea of the camp. So where you end one sentence is kind of a cue to where you're going to pick up the next sentence. So when writing, there should be a rhythm, there should be a roll between sentences, even if we don't have a linking word or a conjunction. If we have this full stop, now a period just shows an independent clause. It's not like a hard break from a line of thought. That's what paragraphs and entire essays are for. It's to continue thoughts. And periods, don't think of a period as like a brick wall, a drastic ending. It's just marking the end of an independent clause. The next independent clause should still follow whatever reasoning. And as a writer, whatever you finish a sentence on, that's kind of a cue to you what the next sentence is about. And this way you can accumulate sentences. They should all follow each other. And sometimes the best way to know what you're going to write next is, what did you write last? So it was sadly the last day of camp, and then you write about camp. It was the last day of camp, sadly. Then you write about that feeling, and you continue with it. I felt very depressed. So yeah, cue yourself as a writer. Look at what you're writing. Pay attention to what you yourself are writing, and that will help you know what you're going to write next. Sometimes writers get writer's block. They don't know what to write. They feel they've reached a dead end. well, look at your own writing. It should cue you as to what you are going to write next. And that way you can build a lot of sentences. You just follow ideas with more ideas. You continue the idea. Pick up a thread from the last sentence and continue that idea into the next sentence. Yeah, Rosa, you're coming back for the notes, but we are still on we're still on commas. We are talking about writing and commas. So, when we talk about writing and punctuation, yeah, we could talk about this all day. It's grammar is the science of it, but once you apply the science, it becomes art. It becomes your art. So once you get the grammar down, you have the rules, you have the science, you have the mathematics, you have the formula, and then you can start using it a little more artistically, a little more poetically. You can feel a little more free with it. Once you know the rules, you kind of feel more comfortable when you break the rules. You know purposely when you break the rules. The confusion comes when you don't know the rules and you're not sure if you're breaking them or using them right. Yeah, Rosa, always go back on YouTube. You can always watch it later, but same notes. We're still on commas. And we have some more student examples. Let's see, I need to change the font on this, and then we'll talk about it. Then we'll get to the next thing, which is dates. Okay. Strangely, comma, I can't understand it, but Sam can't. Strangely, I can understand it, but Sam can't. Okay, so we have a couple rules. We have an introductory element, comma, I can understand it, comma, but Sam can't. And here we have, so this is not an interrupter. It looks like it. But it's actually introductory element, comma, I can understand it, comma, and then that but, that's a fanboy. It's a coordinating conjunction separating two independent clauses. So two uses of a comma in one sentence. Good job, Paluxio. Introductory element and coordinating conjunction. How about this one? Alex, unfortunately, went to the prison. Yes. It's a good use of an interrupter in that sentence. The student is overwhelmingly and repeatedly asking more questions about this convoluted physics class. And in American English, we always put S at the end of physics. Good use of interrupters. Definition in depth and she sure good examples. Okay, let's look at dates. Now this one's a little easier. You all know dates. When we have a date in a sentence, we need commas to break the information in the date. She became the CEO of the company on Friday. So that's day of the week, comma, October 4th, that's the exact date, comma, and then year, 2012. So those different categories of dates, day of the week, specific month and day, year, you have to separate those items with commas when you write them in a sentence. When the date appears in the middle of the sentence, there should be a comma before and after the year. Her promotion to CEO on October 4th, 2012 changed the company in many ways. Okay, so if that year, when you list the year, if it comes in the middle of the sentence, you're going to need one more comma afterwards. It's one of those weird rules where we can actually separate the subject from the verb with a comma. There's not many times we can do that, But if you write year before the verb in your sentence, you're going to need to put a comma afterward. If you have month and year only, just month and year only, no commas. He lived in Korea from November 2004 to April 2006. Month and year only, no commas. Oh, excuse me. No commas. But once you introduce date or time of the week, that's when you need commas. I know, again, weird, right? Weird. Why wouldn't we separate month from year? I don't know. That's just the rule. So dates. Nora, you're asking about article use? I might be. If we say X went to prison, if we said like James went to prison without the article the, is there a difference with the article, or am I wrong in the first place? Now, Nora, are you talking about article use with the subject or with the word prison? So this is a little different topic. So if I said X went to prison, if I said James went to prison, for example, of course, before the proper noun, I wouldn't need. But is there a difference between just prison and the prison? A little bit. I mean, if that's your question, a little bit. And I think Vivek, I think you got it down. So James went to prison. He was found guilty. James went to the prison. He may just be visiting. He may just be visiting. Oh, fantastic. I have to answer a text in the middle of the lesson. Hold on. I'm sorry. I have to apologize for this. Don't you hate it when you're trying to teach? And an important text comes in. Okay. All right, now I'm ready to continue. Well, oddly enough, you may know who I was talking to. I was just texting with Josh. I think you know who that guy is. Addresses. Let's talk addresses. The company's office is at 314 West Main Street, Spokane, WA 99201. Like dates, every important piece of information in an address should be separated with a comma. City, state, zip code, street address. So dates and addresses, everything needs to be separated by commas. Okay, quotes. When we have quotations, we have to use commas in quotations. We'll have to wait and see, he said with a knowing smile. if you begin your sentence with the quotation, you'll need a comma inside the quotation. You'll need a comma inside the quotation. And then you continue the sentence. Then you continue with who said it. But remember that, inside the quotation. Definition depth, you asked, do we have to memorize these rules? It's too much. You don't have to memorize these all, but if you're going to write, if you're going to continue to write, eventually you're going to have to be comfortable with punctuation and comma usage. So in the future, you will have to know them. Memorizing, you can look it up later. I shared the class notes. It gives a lot of the rules and examples of the rules. I'll share that link with you one more time. In the chat room, there's the link. Do we ever use full stop outside the quotation? No, if it's a quotation, we never... if it's a quotation, we never put punctuation outside the quotation marks. But if we use quotation marks to cite something, a source in a paper, then yes. So I'll show you an example of that. Okay. Let me show you the second example first. If you were trying to insult me, comma, she said, comma, you succeeded. So if you interrupt a quotation with the speaker and what they said, then it's comma inside the quotation and then comma after the whoever said the thing, and then continue with the quotation. Okay, let's look at another example. Let's see, I'm trying to think of maybe now. Okay, me citing my sources, this is not exact. We can, in a later lesson, we can talk about citing sources, but this is just an example off the top of my head. Let's say I had to look something up and I took it out of a book and I wanted to cite it properly to show that they're not my words, and I had to do research to find these. We still use quotation marks, but there is no punctuation in the quotation marks. The punctuation actually appears after the source, after you cite the source. So this is called citation. Sometimes when you cite something, the punctuation does happen outside the quotation marks. But if you're just talking about somebody's words, then the punctuation always goes inside the quotation. And here's some examples. Shisher, you said, Pablo said. Now remember, after the person and how they said the thing, comma, quotation mark, how do you say that word? uh, I don't know how to say this name. Johan was moving to Italy. Punctuation always inside the quotation. Oh, John. Oh, John. Okay, my bad. John was moving to Italy. So, comma, use the comma before the quotation here, and then punctuation inside the quotation. Definition in depth, you wrote, my boss always says, work smart, not hard. Good advice. And I would suggest capitalizing the first words of somebody's, whatever they say. I would say capitalize the first word. I think that maybe, now I have to think about that rule. Is that right? Do we capitalize the first word? Oh, I'd have to look that up. If it comes in the middle. Okay, I'll have to look that up. I'm not sure. For now, my instinct says yes, capitalize. I could be wrong there. Shaga, you're asking how can we write date, month, and year? If we go back to this one, date, month, and year in a sentence. Date, month, and year might look something like this. I moved to Seattle on, in America we always put month first, on June 26th, 2003. If you have date, month, and year like this, month, then day, and then year, and then comma separating month, the day, and the year. So something like this. Another example, Milena. Starting with a quotation. I'm going to the store now, comma, she said. That's good. Comma inside the quotation mark. Remember, comma always inside the quotation mark. John, I'm glad I'm helping you. I'm helping you out. It's good that you're spending your extra time watching YouTubes on English. Anshul, I started at 7:30. Every Wednesday I start at 7:30. Today is an extra long class. I'm going to 9:30. So class will be done in 20 minutes. Yes, class will be done in 20 minutes. It's all about commas. So far it's been all about commas because there are so many comma rules. So many comma rules. It's such a widely used piece of punctuation. Paluxio, you said all we can offer you, and good, comma on the inside of the quotation mark. He said, comma after who said it, and then continue the quotation is an omelet. That's good. Oh, how to write out year if I wanted to write it out. June 20, well, that's a good question. 26th, 2003. And I don't even know if I need a hyphen there. Yeah, I can't write it as one word. Maybe I'd write it like that. 2003. So usually it's okay in a paper to use numbers to write out dates, but if you want to write it out, you can do that. You can do that. Oh, you want the links? Yeah, I can give you the links one more time. One more time. Let me go down and get that link. There's the link to the class notes in the chat room to these many comma rules. Another example. This one from Vivek, and it involves Rosa and killing. I hate, and we'd put the article before it, I hate the comma, inside the quotation mark. Good job, Vivek. Rosa said, comma, let's kill who has invented this, comma, and then end punctuation in the quotation mark. Very good. That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. When I was, when I was a student, I also hated commas. It took me a long time to learn all these comma rules, learn how to use the comma correctly. It took me a long time, and occasionally I still make errors with commas. So, don't worry about memorization or being a perfect writer. Just work at being a better writer and getting to know some of the rules. That's where it starts. That's where it starts. Okay, Shisher, yours, let's look at yours, and then I'm gonna fix it a little bit. I love my country, said one of the politicians. Okay, so this is his words. This is what he's saying. But the person who said it, one of the politicians said it, those do not go in quotation marks. The person who is speaking does not go in quotation marks. Only their words, only their spoken words go in the quotation marks. I love my country, comma, said one of the politicians. So the way they said it, and then who said it, goes outside the quotation marks. Just their words go in the quotation marks. How to write year, month, and date and day. Oh, Mr. Pawar, like this. She became the CEO of the company on Friday, October 4th, 2012. So, day of the week, month, specific day, and year. Comma separating day of the month and day, and year. Okay, we're getting short on time, about 15 minutes, everybody. So, before I talked about compounds, we mentioned the word compound sentence. Now let's look at compound subject or object with 3 or more nouns. Now remember, when you have 3 or more nouns as subject or object, you need to separate them. And actually, the first one I have is neither. It's actually part of a prepositional phrase. Compound subject or object, or prepositional phrase with 3 or more nouns. Navigating through snow, sleet, wind, and darkness is a miserable way to travel. And even though, here's an example, the Oxford comma's in there. Let's leave that in there. Even though that's not my style, let's leave that in there as an example with the Oxford comma. But remember, anytime you have a list of things, no matter what part it's taking in the sentence, If it's 3 or more, you have to separate with commas. Here is a compound subject. This is a compound subject. Michael, Gabriel, and Thomas will present their report together. These 3 names are all the subject. This is all the subject of the sentence. It becomes before the verb will present. So I need to use a comma. I separate the 2 first people with the comma, and then the last person I didn't use the Oxford comma. At the picnic, so that's introductory element, comma, I ate, and here are the things I ate: hot dogs, potato chips, coleslaw, and potato salad. So we talked about this as a list before, but you can also think of it if you ever have compound nouns, subject, object, prepositional phrases, you do have to separate with commas. Same with compound verbs. If you have more than one verb, so here I have Joan and Carla, that's my subject, 2 people as my subject. And then I mentioned many things they did together. Went hiking, volunteered at the animal shelter, and finished their projects last weekend. So they did 3 things: hiking, volunteered, and finished their projects. That's a compound verb, and it needs to be at least the 2 first things in that list of verbs, of compound verbs, needs a comma to separate them. Yes, Leo, it's good to go back, Leo, and memorize all these comma rules and make it part of your neural network. Shaga, again, I've shared the class links with you. One more time about that date, though. Day of the month, comma. Month and day together, you don't need a comma there, but comma after and then year. So day of the week, month and day, year. Day of the week, comma, month and day together, comma, year. And that's how you write a date in a sentence. Yes, lots of rules. You can always go back, review the class notes, watch the video again. Try to learn as many of these as possible. Read. It's important to read. It's important to read as much as you can to see examples of commas in use. Question tags. I don't know if you've studied this lesson or not. I'm sure it's archived somewhere. I don't know if I've talked about it. I don't think so. But I'm sure another teacher has, like Sean, has talked about question tags. If you know what a question tag is, you have to use commas with question tags. These willow trees are beautiful, aren't they? Question tags, of course, always end in a question, and they're looking for agreement. So agreement or support. So are, you take the verb or the auxiliary, turn it to negative, and then they refer to willow trees. These willow trees are beautiful, aren't they? So use a comma. Arzang, Arzang, that's how I pronounce your name. Can I pronounce your name? I don't know. Can I? Arzang, that's my pronunciation. Yes, Leo, you're right in your advice. To Nora asks, should I say October 4 or October 4th? You can use either. One is cardinal, one is ordinal. You can use both in your writing. Again, a stylistic rule, I suppose. And for those of you who have to leave us, like definition in depth, of course there'll be another class next week. You can join us same time, which is Wednesday, 7:30, but then Josh has a class on Thursday and Sean has a class on Friday. So those links in the class notes, look at the Smrt class page and you can figure out when we have classes. And Steve, you're saying Word will correct October 4 to October 4th. It'll change cardinal to ordinal. And that's probably right. Probably the most correct date is ordinal, the 4th with the TH at the end. So, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, etc., etc. But if you write in a paper, if you just wrote the number, it makes perfect sense. I'm sure everybody would understand. Paluxio, you're asking me to read out loud some sentences. What sentences? The sentences in the lesson page here, or do you have some sentences in mind? The j sounds like J. Arjang. Arjang. Now I can pronounce your name. Oh, okay. Paluxio is asking me to, in the in the class notes here, let me put them on the page so it makes a little more sense. You guys are hungry for a little pronunciation, I take it? That's a lot. Okay. I'll try my best. I'll try my best to read these. Okay, we have a request from Paluxio. We're going to read aloud some sentences. So let me make these a little bigger. Where's my text size? There it is. Okay. Number one. Flying from London to New York makes me terribly jet-lagged, said the top cheese. By the time I got to my hotel, I was so jet-lagged that I could hardly remember my name. When I travel from the UK to Japan, it always takes at least 2 weeks for me to get over the jet lag. The clocks changed yesterday, so I feel kind of jet-lagged today. I need to set my clock back 3 hours. Don't forget to turn back your clocks. How was that? How was that reading? I did it the best I could. How much time do we have? About 5 minutes. Really quick. Direct address. You don't see this a lot, and if you do see it, it's probably mostly in quotation marks. But if you put somebody's name at the beginning of a sentence, and because it shows you're talking to that person, called direct address, comma afterwards. Mom, I can't find my shoes. So comma will go after the person at the beginning. Appositives, when you rename something in a sentence, this is an appositive, so 2 nouns in a row, and it's the same person. My mother, Angela, is a wonderful cook. Put commas on both sides. This type of sentence is also a stylistic. No, it's not, actually. Forget about it. We'll leave it like that. So comma around the appositive. The painter, comma, one of the city's most promising young artists, comma, began showing his work in galleries before he was 16. Again, this appositive describes the painter in greater detail. Chocolate, comma, my favorite treat, comma, always makes me feel better after a bad day. So this, my favorite treat, describes chocolate. And these are called appositives. 2 nouns or 2 noun phrases in a row, both the same person or the same thing, and giving more information. This is appositive. Yes, undefining, and appositives, we should say this is for undefining appositives or unessential appositives. There is a type where, I'll use Shakespeare again. Shakespeare's play Romeo and Juliet is one of the most performed plays in the world. So when we do this, we can't use a comma. Shakespeare's play Romeo and Juliet is one of the most performed plays in the world. Even though it is an appositive, we can't use commas. The reason is, if I took this out, Shakespeare's play is one of the most performed plays in the world. It makes no sense because he has many plays. So when we do that, oh, not my mother Angela, take that away. When we have to make it clear which one we're talking about, then you cannot use commas. But if we look at this sentence, my mother is a wonderful cook, it still makes sense without the appositive. This is just extra information, Vivek, like your example, Vivek. My dad, Steve, has a girlfriend. And Steve is the name of your dad, so yes. Another Vivek example. My sister, Diary, has a green jacket, which I'm going to steal. We need another comma there. I didn't know Diary was your sister. My sister Diary, so same person, has a green jacket, and then this is an adjective clause describing jacket. All right. Coordinate adjectives. When adjectives are from the same category, and they come in a row, you separate them with commas. That man is a pompous, self-righteous, annoying idiot. These are all adjectives of opinion. They're all showing my opinion. And because these adjectives are all serving the same purpose, showing my opinion, and they come in a row, I separate them with commas. The sweet scintillating aroma of cinnamon rolls filled the kitchen. Because sweet and scintillating are both describing aroma, and they are both what would you call them? Like functional adjectives, or maybe even adjectives of opinion. Again, separate with commas. Separate with commas. So if you have adjectives that all serve the same purpose and they come in a row before the noun that they describe, you separate those adjectives with commas. Adjective clauses, which you probably studied before. If you haven't, there's a lesson on them. If you have a non-essential adjective clause, or also called relative clause, the book, comma, which I read last week, comma, is somewhere in my room. They come after the noun they describe, and they need to be separated by commas. And that's all the comma rules I have for you today. I am done, and I'm sure you're done too. I know a lot of you got a little exhausted and maybe a little dismayed that there are so many comma rules, but don't get dismayed. Don't lose your desire to become better writers and continue practice writing. You can't know all the rules, all the punctuation rules. And we'll talk about more punctuation in the future, like the semicolon, like parentheses, like hyphens. We can talk about more punctuation in the future. There's a lot of punctuation rules. But the more you learn, the easier they are to use, and they will make your writing better. And keep practicing always. Maybe one last example from Shishir, who has an appositive. Let's look at the appositive. Football, my favorite game, improves my health. That is correct. Well, thank you, my excellent online friends, my online learners for coming in and tuning in and staying with me for an extra long class. And thank you for your patience at the beginning. I had microphone problems. Luckily, I was able to fix those. And yeah, never get dismayed. Always, always, always practice. Keep doing better. Improve your English. You're already excellent. And now your next step is, I don't know, super excellent? Or your next step is to master the English language. Once you've practiced something very much, and I know you guys are deep into your studies and you've been doing this, you've been working at it for weeks and months or maybe even years now, just keep going. It's like learning to play a musical instrument. There is no end. There is no finish line. You just keep learning. And sometimes the best way to learn is by practicing. And I'm glad you joined me today. It was good to see you. And I'll be back next week. Hopefully no calamities, no unforeseen circumstances, and class will go smoothly next week. Always remember to tune in to Josh's class and Sean's class on tomorrow and Friday. And yeah, it was great working with you today. Loved your examples today. Loved talking about commas today. I need more coffee. I'm going to go get some. I will see you again next time next week. But for now, how about a quick message from Sean? All right, bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to our channel. Also, if you want the full experience of being a student in a Smrt Live class with things like homework and teacher feedback, follow the link and become a premium subscriber. Also, if you want to see more videos from this class, check out our playlist.